Hello and welcome to another episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. My name is Jacob, and today I'm doing something a little different. Now, usually I go and do pretty much all Godzilla and Kaiju related content, but I'm actually a pretty big Terminator fan. The first two films are some of my all-time favorite movies, especially Terminator 2. It's just good stuff. So, with this film in the works, with previous director on this, he's a producer, James Cameron, who is a man I have a lot of respect for. I mean, he literally created one of, like, an award-winning, huge grossing movie, Titanic, just so he could go deep-sea diving, basically. True story. And he made some of the greatest action movies of all time, that being the original two Terminator films, and Aliens. He's back on production with this film for the first time, I think, since, Terminator 2. He's associated with the series that he created. We have Linda Hamilton returning to play Sarah Connor, one of the greatest action heroes that we've seen in cinema, of course, from Terminator 2. We have Arnold Schwarzenegger returning as the T-800 in this film. And we have the dude who directed Deadpool helming this thing. So a lot of stuff was lining up and looking like it was gonna be a really good film. Furthermore, they were retconning Terminator 3, Genesis, Salvation. Those films were out of the timeline. They're in a different universe or whatnot. So this film thinks of itself as the true champion to those two first great films. So what did I think when I saw this film in cinemas on opening night? I was kind of underwhelmed, to be honest. Now, I talk about all these expectations and stuff like that, like, I went in with these huge expectations, but honestly, seeing the trailers, I actually went in with my expectations kind of dumbed down. Like, I was still really hoping this film would surprise me based on all those attributes that I told you earlier. But this film basically just gave me the 2-hour long, or however long this film is, version of what I saw in the trailers. And that's not to say it was horrible or anything like that, but I don't know, this film didn't really feel like it needed to exist. It kind of felt like a big rehash of a lot of the stuff we've seen in other films. And furthermore, my biggest negative would be a lot of the retconning it did, or sort of the way it continues some of these stories that really make the conclusion of, say, Terminator 2 feel like a big waste, which is not a good thing to do when, you're trying to make a sequel to a film as good as that. So yeah, let's kind of get into it. Let me give you guys a brief synopsis. I'm not the best with synopsises, whatever the plural of synopsis is. But we start off, and it's set a couple of years after the events of Terminator 2. Sarah Connor and John Connor are, out on the run trying to lay low in the middle of nowhere when, gosh, out of nowhere, Arnold Schwarzenegger in his CGI re-younged face appears and slaughters our heroes. Well, heroes. He just slaughters John Connor. And yeah, first of all, that is not the way you start a movie. They really pulled Aliens 3 out of nowhere, because Alien 3 starts off with them killing off Newt and the other guy, and that we came to love from Aliens, and it's just, oh man, that's not a good way to start. And I was sitting there shocked, like, but okay, let's see where the film will take us from here. Now we cut to modern day Mexico, and out of nowhere there's those lightning bubbles where the Terminators travel back through time, and what appears is Justin Bieber. So this lady Justin Bieber appears, and aside from her, we're introduced to this character who's basically Dora the Explorer and her brother, and they work in a factory. And through the course of the film, we learn. So yeah, this is going to be a big spoiler review, by the way, so don't even bother considering this a not spoiler review. I'm just going to jump in any old time, which is pretty much now. So the they the girl turns out to be basically the new John Connor, and this new Terminator also appears out of nowhere. I'm gonna call him Sam because I don't remember what its name is, but basically, uh, we find out that Justin Bieber is an augmented human that came from a new future where Skynet is no longer a thing because Terminator 2 stopped Skynet altogether, even though I thought it just postponed it. Eh. But there's this new thing called, I think, Legion, which just made me think of Gamera 2. But whatever. Justin Bieber is here to protect Dora the Explorer from Sam, the new Terminator. But out of nowhere, our the probably the best part of this movie, Linda Hamilton shows up again as old grumpy lady Sarah Connor, and basically is just a badass and defends them for a while. And shenanigans happen. We find that the Terminator that originally killed John Connor is old man Schwarzenegger, who's living in a hunting lodge with a Hispanic family for some reason, who he's not physical with his wife, and he has a wife now, and it's weird. And basically he leaves his new family to protect the Explorer, along with Sarah Connor, who they have obvious tension with because Sarah has not really forgiven him for killing John. Shenanigans happen. Everyone dies except for Dora the Explorer, and it turns out she's the future resistance leader. And yeah, so that's a very, very poor synopsis of the film. Let's talk about the characters here. So, obviously I gave them all silly, funny names, but I gave them those names for a reason. So, let's start off with the new Terminator villain in this, who I call Sam, which, no offense to anyone named Sam, but it's kind of like a soft name. It's kind of like a generic name that you don't... It's not very... How would you put it? It doesn't have a lot of personality to it. And that's what I felt about this Terminator character. For starters, he's played by the most bland actor you could think of. Like, even going back to, like, I forget the name of the model of the Terminator from Terminator 2, the liquid metal one. But the guy who played him, even though he had, like, no emotions to him, really, he felt very cold, calculating. He'd like lean his head to the side and just kind of look really menacing when doing things. And he was played by sort of an interesting actor. Was really able to pull that off. This guy just felt so bland, and like, there's no character to him. And he felt, aside from just being sort of overpowered in the general sense that a Terminator is, he didn't really seem like he had a lot going for him threat-wise. I don't know. I found him very forgettable. Now, his sort of quirk was that he could split in two. His outer body could be that, like, liquid metal thing, like his flesh, but he also had, like, a mechanical skeleton inside him as well, which for some reason didn't have, like, a brain case. It was weird. He had, like, this big cutout of his head, which looked kind of awkward, but whatever. So I wasn't overly compelled by that guy. He felt very generic. Even going back to like Terminator 3, like you had the female Terminator, and she had a lot of pizzazz. She had some attitude, and I think she did a really great job. Even though a lot of people don't like Terminator 3, actually a funny thing about this film in general is, for the most part, I actually sat there going, I kind of miss Terminator 3 because of this. Like, it was giving me nostalgia for Terminator 3. Like, I was just even so far as there were elements of the film, like the way they finally kill this new Terminator villain, was basically the same way that Arnold killed the Lady Terminator in Terminator 3, except for it was much more epic when he did it then, and it felt a little bit more lively and energetic. And this one, I found it a little bit hard to care, because going into our next character, let's talk about Dora the Explorer. So good old Dora is basically our retcon of John Connor. Her character is one of the probably the worst parts of this film. Now, nothing against the actress or anything. I think she did fine with what she was given, but she was written very poorly, and it was very, very hard to believe that she would one day become the great general of the resistance and all that sort of stuff. Especially standing next to someone like Sarah Connor and even robot Justin Bieber lady. She had no training, no nothing, and she was just basic, simple lady. And that's not to say that I want to say that you can't have like a strong female character or whatnot, even though I'm a bit impartial to films that try and ham-fist that sort of overly feminist agenda, sort of woke stuff, which I feel that this film kind of did, but I don't really want to get into too much because people will throw rocks at me in the comments and all that sort of crap, but whatever. The worst thing about her character really was that it was basically they removed John Connor just to put her as him when she had no personality to her, really. I think she had a little bit more personality than Justin Bieber lady, which I'll get into a bit later, but she wasn't an interesting character at all, and she was very unbelievable in what they were giving her to do and saying about her and all this sort of stuff, and it wasn't convincing at all. It really took me out of the film. Like, a lot of the stuff in this film just felt unnecessary just to drag it out, and it didn't feel original. It was really like a rehash of Terminator 2 in a lot of ways, with her being the new John Connor and stuff like that, but it really wasn't as good at all or necessary in that regard. But let's talk about Justin Bieber lady. I think she was alright. She did a really good job in the action scenes. Her hair, like I keep bringing up Justin Bieber, was a little dumb looking. Initially I was worried she was going to be a big Mary Sue, but they did something really clever with her and made it so she could do short bursts of really powerful stuff, but her metabolism wasn't built for sustained life, basically, so she was kind of needed a lot of medication and drugs to keep her going and to be able to protecting this other girl. So I like that about her, but the action scenes were pretty cool with her, but my main issue with her is when it comes to the actual dialogue and stuff like that and the way she was written, she came across as really bland. She had a very bland expression, not much going on there. Very limited sort of scope of what she was doing, which is a bit unfortunate, but let's talk about Linda Hamilton. She was by far the best part of this film. She was played a little bit monotone in this film, but out of everyone, I felt like she had the biggest dynamic range still of what was going on, and you could really feel that she was giving this performance her all in this. She actually reminded me a lot of... Oh, I forgot her name. Just give me one little second, because I have it open here, because I knew I was going to bring up this comparison. She reminded me a lot of Jamie Lee Curtis in the 2018 Halloween film, where she comes back as a badass old version of, what was her character's name? Laurie Strode from that film. So she's very similar, Linda Hamilton, to her, kind of reprising this same sort of badass role in her old age, and I really loved her performance in this. I think writing-wise, they kind of made her character some detriment to her character, especially with some of those comments about like the whole it's just your womb kind of stuff, which really kind of diminishes her as like a badass female protagonist, because like she really was the thing that was saving the world, I think, more so than John Connor. It wasn't just all about her protecting her womb or any of that shit that this film tries to pander. But her performance was really good, and every time she was on screen it was captivating, and I'd say it's worth seeing this film just for that. And finally, let's talk about good old Arnie. I have a mixed opinion on him in this film. Like, I love Arnold Schwarzenegger and everything he's in, and he did some really great stuff in this film. He was really funny, but again, some of the writing and some of the way he was meshed into the story felt a little bit awkward. But he was definitely funny to see on film. But I really didn't like the way they sort of got rid of a lot of the badassness that he really should and can portray as this character. Like, even down to like the scene where he was about to pick up his sunglasses and he didn't. I found that genuinely kind of sad. A lot of the stuff, it's nowhere near as bad, but it kind of gives me vibes of like what they did with Luke Skywalker's character in The Last Jedi. Again, nowhere near as bad, because that film was atrocious in the way it treated the character of Luke, but here it was kind of really weird. I did enjoy some of the aspects. Like I said, it was really funny to see the badass sort of Terminator kind of settle down, in the way he's got like a drapes or in interior design business or something like that, and his delivery was really funny of the lines. He's always got that classic deadpan delivery. And, he just is the T-800, you can't really take that away from him. But again, it just had something that felt a little bit off and just not really true to the previous films. But whatever. Like I said, a mixed bag. And then we talk about, let's say, the action in general. Some of it was really cool, like especially towards the end fights. Like, a lot of crazy stuff was going on, lots of different locations, lots of different set pieces. Some kind of a lot of it was, again, doing stuff that happened in the previous films. A lot of it reminded me of Terminator 3, funny enough, especially the way, like I said, they killed off the bad guy with the bomb power source from the other lady, Justin Bieber one, which again brings up little plot holes, because if they had the power source for her that could destroy this thing initially, why didn't she just do that initially, or bring a second one like installed in her that she could take out? Because I know there's the whole thing about Terminators having to have the flesh on them to be able to travel back in time or something like that, so she couldn't just hold it. But still, if she knew she was also going to die, because the explorer lady knew what was going to happen with her, that she was going to ultimately die anyway, she could have saved a lot of people dying initially. And the action, it felt a little choppy a lot of the time as well, especially like in a lot of those car chases, and a lot of I felt like they did, the shots were way too quick, edited together, and too short. The tension in the original films was so good, because they did lots of long takes. The action in those films was not choppy at all, especially with those long car chase scenes. Like, you could always see the big truck in the background when there was Arnie and what's his name, John Connor on the motorcycle, and that huge ominous truck coming towards them, and a lot of those fight scenes and stuff, they were just paced beautifully. But in this film, it felt really choppy. Some of the CGI was kind of eh. A lot of the scenes that called back to the war that would have been in the future, with all the skulls and the naked robot Terminators shooting and stuff, they didn't seem anywhere near as creepy or as cool as they were in Terminator 2, where they were, the stop motion, and that was really atmospheric. Here they kind of had an attempt for it, but it just felt dull and grey and boring and CGI. And I know I sound like I'm whining, but it's just my honest reaction to this film in those sort of moments. Like I said, some of it, the action was pretty entertaining, and it was, fine as a popcorn sort of thing, but overall, the film as a whole, I don't really feel like it's anywhere near a worthy contender as, like, the sequel to Terminator 2, which is really upsetting to me, because even though some of the sequels to for example, Aliens, which is one of my favorite films of all time, even Alien 3, I know a lot of people don't like that film. I still think that's a much better sequel to that film, for example, than any of the ones we've really gotten for Terminator 2, although I actually do have a soft spot for Terminator 3, which I kind of felt strengthened after seeing this film, because really my sort of initial thought after seeing this film was, I like Terminator 3 more than this. Then we go to, like, thinking about, so what about Terminator Salvation and Genesis? Whether they stack up, because I know Salvation has a lot of sort of mixed feelings about it. I actually haven't seen it in full, and the parts I have seen I saw a while ago, so I really can't say. I haven't had like an inkling to watch it because I didn't really like the visual style of it. It felt too gray, it felt too flat looking, again, like the scenes in this film where they go to the future, because I don't know, something about the way James Cameron shot those original, very practical effect driven sort of horrible scenes of this apocalypse was so much cooler. I found in Terminator 2, and they just kind of feel dull in since then in what they've been showing. So I haven't watched Salvation. I can't say whether I like that more or less. From what I've heard, it seems to be an alright movie. But Genesis, I don't know whether I like this film more or less than Genesis. I feel like that I like different aspects of them. Like if you put the two films together, maybe you could have a really good movie. For example, this film, Dark Fate, felt much better cast. You had Linda Hamilton and Arnold back in here, and they were doing... It was so good to see them back on screen, especially Linda Hamilton. Like, she should have been in Genesis, but Terminator Genesis felt really miscast. No one felt right in the role there. Arnold was, again, funny in that film, and I enjoyed seeing him, but it was kind of dumb what they did with him in that film as well. And the plot of that film was also just a little bit of a mess, and it was trying too hard to do something different, but that's also its strength, whereas this film just rehashes too much of the same stuff, but makes it all really bland and a little bit uninteresting. So I kind of feel like those two films are the same for me in terms of how they feel. But this film was missing a lot of the heart that you really felt in the first two Terminator films, or even Terminator 3, because there was that relationship that was a little bit contrived, but it was still sort of there. Especially just Arnold's performance also kind of had a lot of heart in even Terminator 3, but especially you think about the relationship between Carl Reese and Sarah Connor in that first film. Then you got John Connor and the Terminator and Sarah Connor. Just that relationship between all of those three had a lot of heart. Like you could even bloody well tear up when the T-800 sinking into that molten metal at the end there. And even Terminator 3 it was very feel good, I felt, and it kind of gave me some of those feels, especially thinking of that ending with him sacrificing himself, blowing up the female Terminator, being like, "You are terminated." And I just found the next couple of films, they just were lacking in that department. So I've been rambling on for quite a while now, and I think I've basically covered all my thoughts about this film. Whether I recommend seeing it or not is really up to you guys. I would advise seeing it for Linda Hamilton. However, if you don't want to support mediocre sequels, perhaps avoid it and pirate it later. That's just my thoughts about the film. I think it's kind of mediocre and it doesn't really do anything new, and the only real benefit it has is it has some really good performances from Linda Hamilton, and it's cool to see Arnold again. Other than that, it's kind of dull, and I'm really hoping that the Terminator franchise either stops or we actually get a legitimately good film. And that's it for this little, very long and rambly review of Terminator Dark Fate. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and or subscribe, or not, up to you guys, and may all your vinyl be irradiated vinyl. Over and out.